Another fascinating biology lecture. I believe this is lecture number 6. I could be mistaken. But anyway, we went over the cell theory. We went over macromolecules, the scientific method. Wait, I said cell theory. We haven't went over the cell theory yet. Uh, that's what we'll do today. But we went over scientific method, macromolecules, what is biology, characteristics of life. So now we're getting ready to delve into biology. So the last 4 or 5 lectures have been review. This is the new stuff. So this is actually the heart of bio, the cell theory, cells, all that stuff. Because the cell is the basic unit of life. So we start small. We start at the cell. So the title of this little lecture is the cells. It should be cell. The cell theory and cells. All right. So this goes way back to 1665. So in 1665, this guy, his name is Robert Hooke, used a microscope, a rudimentary microscope, and he saw these little rooms, little rectangular boxes, and he is the first one to name cells, and he thought of the name cells because they look like the little rooms that monks lived in. So Robert Hooke in 1665 was the first person to name cells. He actually named them. This next fellow, uh, Robert Hooke was 1665. This dude, Anton van Leeuwenhoek, it's a hard Dutch name to say. Anyway, he was a microscope maker, and he was the first guys to see living organisms under a microscope. And this is his microscope. The lens is what he held to his eye, and he was able to see things living under the microscope. Go back, Robert Hooke, his things were already dead, so he didn't see living things. He saw things that used to be alive, but were no longer living. So this guy, Anton, he looked at stuff. He put a little bit of pond water right there, and he would look at pond water. Then he would scrape the stuff off his teeth. This is 1673, so dental hygiene wasn't a main priority. So there's a lot of scrapings to be scraped off his teeth. He put it on the little sample holder. You can see it here, sample holder. You put it in focus, and you can see living things swimming around on your teeth. That is gross, but he is the first guy, the first person, Anton, the first person to see living organisms. So he saw living organisms in 1673. This next person, 1838, so almost 200 years later, 150-ish years later, this guy, a German botanist, he said all plants, all plants are made of cells. So he came up with the brilliant idea that, hey, I'm a German botanist. Botanists are guys that study plants. And he said, well, all of my plants are made of cells. His name is Matthias Schleiden. And to remember this, there's a good way to remember this guy's name, Schleiden. If you've ever seen the movie Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, the kids get shrunk down. They're insect size. Anyway, the insects go on top of this flower, and to get back to the ground, they have to do what? Down the leaf. They have to sliden down the leaf. Sliden. So, to remember this dude, he said plants made of cells. Plants, you like to go sliding down. Sliding. 1838. A year later, another German, these Germans know a lot about their cells. He was a zoologist. Those, instead of working with plants, he worked with animals. So he's going to say all animals are made of cells. And to remember this guy's name, it kind of sounds like an animal. His name is Theodor Schwann. 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 Because Schwann kind of sounds like swan. Yes. So anyway, Schwann said all animals have cells. A year after Schleiden. All right, the last guy. About 20 years later, so around the same time, another German medical doctor. He looked under his microscope and he saw cells dividing, breaking in two. So from one cell becoming two cells. And his name was Rudolf Virchow. It looks like Virchow, but it's Rudolf Virchow. Okay, he said that cells split apart from one another. So you have one cell, cells reproduce by just breaking themselves apart. So one cell breaks into two cells. He saw that and he says, well, all cells have to come from other cells. So those three were five guys. The three scientists, Virchow, Schleiden, and Schwann, along with Hooke, the guy that named cells, and Anton. All of their theories rolled into one, and we call it the cell theory. The cell theory. And this blue, blobby looking thing, this is one of our cells in our body. This is a T cell. This fights with the immune system. So this is a cell that you would find in a normal immune system. All right, so this cell theory, it's divided into three parts. Okay, so Schleiden and Schwann and Schleiden said plants and animals both have cells. Okay, but they combined their two statements into one umbrella statement. They said all living things are made of cells. So not just plants and not just animals, but both. So all living things are made of cells. Part two of the theory, it says the cell is the basic unit of structure and function. So the cell is the building block of life. So the cell is the smallest living thing. The cell is the smallest living component of life. And thanks to Virchow, part three, all cells come from pre-existing cell. So the trillions of cells that you have in your body right now came from another cell. Every cell came from another cell. A cell just doesn't spontaneously grow. And you might ask yourself, well, what about mold? What about mold? You can put bread up, and it seems like mold grows spontaneously. But in the air, without you knowing, there are mold spores. So little things of mold are flying around your house, flying around your car. You can't see them because they're super tiny. But when they get into a package of bread, that one mold spore has that whole slice of bread to eat. Okay? When it eats, when it finds favorable conditions, it eats and it starts to multiply, and it multiplies and it multiplies and it multiplies. Eventually, that one invisible mold spore turns into a visible colony of mold. So the mold didn't happen out of nowhere. It started with a tiny one, and then it just grew into a massive population of mold. So again, cells have to come from somewhere. They don't just spontaneously generate. So last year, I asked my students to come up with a not a rap per se, but a song parody for the self theory. So they could parody any song that's taking the beat and the rhythm of the song and then replacing the words with your own words. And the best group last year was Blaine Butler. I don't know if you guys know Blaine Butler, plays on the football team, um, creative guy. Anyway, they did the Self Theory song, but they used a different song. I'm gonna let you listen to it. It's really good and really creative, and I think you guys are gonna have to dabble with this and see if you can come up with an even better song than Blaine Butler's. Okay, so let me flip over to that. Whoops. All right, here you go. It's it's a parody of "Don't Stop Believing," and it's really he didn't have a guitar. He kind of you'll see This is really good.
Ready? Are you sure?
Mm-hmm.
It's on?
It's on.
Okay. Ready? I'm gonna tell you about the cell theory. And if you listen, it'll be real easy. About how cells work in your life and all around. Math decided said all plants have cells. And I guess the thought went pretty well. And Theodore Schwann said all animals did too, and they both are true. The gray cell theory, living things have some sort of cell. They're the basic structure and function of living things. All cells come from pre-existing cells. I don't know how that. Okay, and then Rudolph just said a thought aloud. He said all cells come from pre-existing cells, multi and unicellular, both alike. The gray cell theory. All living things have some sort of cell. They're the basic structure and function of living things. All cells come from pre-existing cells.
So you can see they had fun with it. It was you could be as creative as you wanted. Uh, I allowed you to pick any song, change the words, and incorporate some of the cell theory stuff. So it's a fun assignment, and I'm gonna give you guys a chance to see how creative you guys could be. All right, you saw Blaine Blaine's was by far my favorite out of all of last year. But you guys will get the chance. So think now, like he went home and wrote lyrics to that. Think now of what song that you could easily parody. Um, That'll be a song that you know well enough, the rhythm and the beat of that song that you know well enough where you can just easily put your words in. Don't do a song you don't know because it's going to be hard to think of the rhythm and add new words. But anyway, so sorry, a little review. Uh, all living things are, say it out loud, made of cells. Yes, yes. Cells are the basic unit of, yes, structure and function. Good, good. The cell is the basic unit of life. Yes, And cells come from the reproduction of pre-existing cells. Pre-existing cells. Make sure these are the three. These are the three facts, the three tenets of the cell theory. Make sure you know each one of these. So if you want to shorten your notes, want to make them more concise, these 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Make sure you know 1, 2, and 3. All living things are made of cells. The cell is the basic unit of structure and function. It's the basic unit of life. All cells come from pre-existing cells. So now that we have a cell, all living things, like the cell theory says, all living things are made of cells. But those things that have cells are different. You can be unicellular. Una means one, and cellular means cellular. So these things have one cell. So your bacteria, your strep bacteria, the bacteria that gives you strep throat, bacteria that gives you athlete's foot, bacteria that gives you rheumatoid fever. Is that right? Yeah. Anyway, all bacteria, rheumatic fever. That's what I was thinking of. Anyway, all of those bacteria are unicellular. They only have one cell. So one cell. So when you go to a doctor and he treats E. coli, as another example, you go to a doctor and he treats a bacterial infection, well, the things he's treating are just tiny creatures with only one cell. Okay. On the flip side, you have the multicellular organisms. Multi meaning multiple, cellular meaning cellular. So these things are many-celled. So anything other than bacteria. So a tree, a cat, a dog, a human, a goat, etc., etc. All those are multicellular. And these are the things that we're most common with. We are most common with multicellular organisms. So if I say, hey, name me a living thing, you would say tree before you would say E. coli or Staphylococcus or whatever. All right, so the unicellular, so you can call them unicellular, you can call them bacteria, but the fancy science word is prokaryote. Prokaryote. And another interesting little story. This comes from Latin. This is a Latin word. Pro. The word pro means before. Before. Karyote means kernel. So prokaryotes literally mean, if you translate it literally from the Greek, it means before the kernel. Well, what does that mean? The kernel is the nucleus. So they call the nucleus, because you can see the nucleus, and we'll see those later. You can see the nucleus inside of a cell. So the kernel, that's what they were calling the nucleus. So these are called before pro-nucleus. Okay, so these are before the nucleus. All right, so these are like I said, bacteria. So these are simple. So all they have is a cell wall. A cell wall goes around the cell. They have a cell membrane. Cell membrane is right by the cell wall, like interior to the cell wall. They have DNA. DNA in this example is pink. They have ribosomes. You see the ribosomes in here. You probably can't see them. Little dots. They have a cytoplasm. That's the liquidy stuff inside the cell, kind of like the cell jelly. And they have a cytoskeleton. The cytoskeleton is what holds the cell together. So think of your skeleton. Think of your skeleton. Cytoskeleton is the cell's skeleton. It provides framework for the cell. Okay? Provides framework for the cell. So these are all the things that bacteria have in common. So they're very basic. So cell wall, cell membrane, a place for DNA. Everything has DNA. Ribosomes, cytoplasm, and a cytoskeleton. That's the basic. Some may have a flagella. That is just a tail. Whoops. So this thing back here to provide motion, that's just called a flagella. So now I'm going to show you examples of bacteria and give you a little introduction on bacteria. Show you some pictures. All right. This is a type of bacteria, Propionibacterium. This is the guy responsible for your acne. So when you get acne, it's more likely people with oily skin get acne. But the oil in and of itself doesn't cause your outbreaks of acne. You have this guy on your face that feeds off your skin and your oil. So he feeds off your skin and oil, and that's what gives you the acne. So if this guy wasn't on your face, your zits wouldn't be a problem. Your zits wouldn't be there. But since he's there, you get those zits as a response to him doing what he does. These little dudes are the things that live up your nose. And just because you have these guys living in your nose, it doesn't mean that you're dirty or you're gross or you're nasty. One person living, just one of us, has more bacteria in our body than there are total of people that have ever lived. I mean, that's a crazy number. That's how many of bacteria are just in one person. So the bacteria in our body is there for a reason. Like, for instance, when you go to the doctor and he gives you an antibiotic, antibiotics don't necessarily know what bacteria to go for. So they're anti. Bio means life. So they're against all life that lives inside your body. So they go, just say you have a bad, just say MRSA, for instance. So you're taking heavy duty bacteria or antibiotics to get rid of the MRSA. So they give you all these antibiotics. They crank your body full of antibiotics. It not only goes after the MRSA, the bad stuff that's really hurting you, but it goes after the good stuff that's living in your guts. We have bacteria in our guts that help us break down and digest food, but it goes after all that. So if you've ever noticed, after you've taken a treatment of an antibiotic, the next thing that happens to you is you're afflicted with diarrhea. And that is because when you took all those antibiotics, it wiped out your entire population of bacteria living in your gut. So now you don't have as much help as you do digesting all those minerals and all that stuff you need. So it just comes out as water. So it's good to have some bacteria. Not all bacteria, that's a misconception. Not all bacteria are bad bacteria. Some are helpful. This guy, for instance, he is the reason that we smell. Other than that, he doesn't hurt us. So he likes to live in damp, warm places. So just say you go to the gym, you don't wear any deodorant. Well, this guy's living in your armpit, and he lives off of your sweat and your skin cells. So when he eats, your sweat, lives off your sweat. He produces, not you. You don't have body odor. This guy does. When he processes your skin and your sweat, he gives off the smell of body odor. So it's not you, it's him. So if someone says, "Hey, dude, you stink," say, it's not me. It's my bacteria under my armpits, because they live off you, and then they give off their own odor. So those guys live on us, and they don't really cause that big of a deal. Um, I mean, it does suck to stink, I guess, but you could put um, deodorant on it, kind of go along with that. So those guys, they live in your nose, live on your skin, not a big deal. This guy, the same the same family of bacteria that gives you strep throat. So streptococcus, it it could turn into something a bit more problematic. And if you are queasy, I advise you now to skip forward a few minutes to avoid these next few pictures. So the same thing that can give you strep throat. Everyone's had strep throat. I've had strep throat when I was a kid. Seems like every other week I had strep throat. But the same thing that gives you that, the same type of bacteria, can cause this, the flesh eating bacteria. His hand is eaten away by this bacteria. Again, another picture, a different person. His upper arm by his elbow has been eaten away. That's their knee. That's the back of someone's knee. That's his thumb. And this is a process. So it starts at A and goes to the second D. So A is when it first started. It's severe, but it gets worse. B is the worst of it. Okay, that's the top of the foot. That's the bottom of the foot. Top of the foot, bottom of the foot. And then they treated it. Looks like he lost his toe, and now the wound is starting to close. And this is when it finally healed up. So he did lose his second toe. That's why they always say, if you have cuts on your hands, make sure you wash your hands, hand sanitizer, soap and water, because you don't want stuff like this to happen to you. All right, almost finished. This is the universal cell components. These 5 things are in every cell. So bacteria cell or a plant cell, they all have these 5. The plant cells are going to have more things, but they all have these. So every cell, plant or bacteria or animal or bacteria, are all going to have these 5 things in common. So they're all going to have a cell membrane, DNA, cytoplasm, ribosomes, cytoskeleton. I talked about these a bit before. These 5 things provide support like a skeleton. Ribosomes is where the organisms make protein inside their body, and we'll go over that process later on. Cytoplasm is the watery jelly-like substance in the cell. DNA, that's just the genetic material inside a cell. And then the cell membrane, that's the membrane or the barrier that goes around the cell. All right, so we are going to stop at prokaryotes. Remember, prokaryote, they have no nucleus. Pro rhymes with no, no, and then karyote means kernel or nucleus. So no nucleus. Prokaryotes have no nucleus. The next time we will talk about eukaryotes. Eu in Greek means true. So these are true kernels or true nucleuses. So until next time, I'll see you guys.